Hey everybody, welcome to the 1947 Rise podcast, a podcast that helps India born, US trained Indians get integrated into the Indian technology ecosystem and inspires them to move back to India to build massive tech companies and or help enable the tech ecosystem. We do this by interviewing India born, US trained Indians who have moved back to India and built massive tech companies themselves and or helped enable the tech ecosystem. Aakrit, excited to have you on the show.
Yes, Shiva, thanks so much for having me. It's a very interesting topic that you have chosen for this podcast, something very relevant to my journey and just the world that I come from. So I'm super excited to talk about it today.
Would love for you to start by telling us your story, your journey from, born in India, moving to the US, and then moving back to India.
Yeah, so I grew up in at the time known as obviously Bombay, and then while I was growing up, it changed. It changed to Mumbai. I, was grew up in a family, or my father rather, and my grandfather as well. They were always in their own. They had their own businesses. So I always joke about it that they were the serial entrepreneurs of those times where they used to run. Where they had one business after the other in very obviously old school traditional businesses like steel and textile and so on. So that is the sort of family background I grew up in. I no siblings, only child. So yeah, the good and the bad that come with that. And you know, um, as always, as with most parents in India, by the time I got to 10th grade, they wanted me to apply and sit for the JEE and go to IIT and sort of do all of that. And as with a lot of 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds, I figured that I don't want to spend my 10th, 11th, 12th spend I don't want to spend so much time studying for an exam. It just doesn't excite me. Obviously, retrospectively, I'm not sure that was the wisest idea, but I just said that no, I don't want to do that. So then the alternate was, okay, look, what are the other good engineering options? Where else can we can I get a high quality engineering education? Of course, there are a lot of other good colleges in India as well. But then that's where I met a few friends and just people who I know were applying to go to the US to do their engineering, their bachelor's. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I didn't have any idea about the concept. In fact, I got into the whole let's go to the US for undergrad thing very late compared to most average. Like most other kids used to start like applying and thinking about it closer to when they were in end of 10th or maybe 11th grade. I almost started thinking about it in 12th grade. Okay, look, this can also be a good option. And one thing led to the other, and then I ended up applying to a bunch of engineering colleges in the US. And obviously, the one thing that you have to figure out before you make this call is the financial commitment, because that's very different, right, compared to doing engineering in India. So obviously figured that out with my dad and with my family, saying कि नहीं मुझे यही करना है, and this is what what excites me. So if there's a way to figure this out, I would love it. And I think let's just say they were very supportive, and fortunately we had some we had the financial means to be able to afford it. And yeah, that's what took me on my first one-way trip to the land of the free.
Yeah, and then you moved to US, and what school did you get into, and your journey in US?
I went to University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. It is uh, the least well-known great school of of in engineering in the US. I always like to say it like that because it's actually a great college. In fact, I'll tell you some things about it. But they're terrible at like PR, and they're terrible at like talking widely about themselves. But University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, it's about 2 hours south of Chicago. It's a top, I think, rankings, I don't know, but definitely within the top 5 or 10 engineering colleges in the country. That's the reason it excited me. Honestly, another reason it got me excited was it has a huge pedigree of entrepreneurship in the college, which is very strange for a college that's like in the middle of nowhere next to Chicago. Only other thing over there is cornfields, but it has a good tradition of a lot of founders. So Mark Andreessen went to UIUC. Tom Siebel, went to UIUC. Larry Ellison went, but it dropped out. The Yelp founders. Fun fact is that PayPal was also Max Levchin is from UIUC, and then a lot of the PayPal mafia that's very well known was recruited from UIUC. So the YouTube founders are also from UIUC, and then so on and so forth. Right? These are the extreme popular names, but there's a lot of there's a history of technology and entrepreneurship. So that got me very excited. And that's where I decided to go. Very cold.
No, UIUC, by the way, has a great tennis team. One of my really good friends went there and he played tennis for them. And so after graduation, I believe you worked in US for a little bit, and then you decided to move back to India. And why did you decide to move back to India?
Yeah. So see, I was very clear when I think I was clear about two things when I first moved at the age of 18. And 18-year-olds are, you can only be as clear as as you imagine. But I was fairly clear that for sure I want to work in the US for some time. And yes, for sure I see my longer term base in India. Those were two things that I think fairly clear right from the get go. Why I felt like, this actually was true. I feel like if you really want to imbibe another country's culture, learn the good, bad, ugly, perhaps grow as a person or do whatever, the only way to do is to really work and be a part of that culture. As a student, you don't really learn much, right? As a student, you're in a bubble in a university with your select group of friends, and you don't really see the day-to-day working. So I felt like by actually spending some time working there, you'll really learn a lot about a different culture, I think. And the second was, look, all said and done, there is a reason, at least, and that used to be the case till 15 years back. There was a reason why, the US is the largest economy, the US is the largest market cap companies, and all of that, because there's something that works in the corporate or the professional setup there, right? Like their style of working or the way they do it or how they think about things. So obviously I wanted to experience that okay, look, for the lack of better words, ki America ke pani mein kya hai, right? What makes this country tick in when it comes to corporate and work culture.
Yeah.
So very clear that I wanted to work. And then second, at least when I went there initially, very clear I wanted to come back because at the time when I went, I felt like one, I wanted to be closer to family, even in the long term. And second, I think it always felt like when we were growing up in the 90s, that apna time aane wala hai. It was like that thing that we were told all the time that, look, by the time you guys will grow up, the economy will be very much there for you to make the most of it. And look, to some degree, it's been true. To some degree, it's been false. But definitely, the action over the last decade, right, as especially in what we do in digital and tech, has been phenomenal, right? And the next decade is probably even going to be more exciting. So I think that was always built into you growing up, that no, by the time you grow up, India will be the place to be, nowhere else. So I think keeping those two things in mind, I always felt I wanted to come back. Now, obviously, what happened is along the way that when it finally came down to time to actually make the move back, I was still. It was not as easy, and it was not as like, okay, look, let's definitely do it. But by then, this was 2011, right? 10 years back, like I said, we had started to see the first seeds of the tech evolution. Flipkart had raised a couple of rounds by then. I remember meeting somebody who said there's a nice new startup called Ola Cabs that you should check out. तो वो सब होने लग गया था, you know. So yeah, that finally convinced me to come back.
And so you made the move back uh, in what year?
2011.
2011. And when you moved back, how was the journey in the beginning, and then how did Haptic come about?
Yeah. By the way, I want to tell you one funny story, and I tell everybody, all these guys, is whenever I meet them. So before I came in 2010, I made a trip to India, you know, as part of a holiday, family holiday, whatever. But also, I wanted to kind of scope ki yahan pe kya chal raha hai, you know, what's going on, what does the ecosystem look like, what is for tech, entrepreneurs, startups, all of that jazz. So I came 2010 and I came home to Bombay, and then I said I want to go to Bangalore because मैंने सुना है कि that is where everything happens. So I went to Bangalore for 2 days. Okay, first ever trip into Bangalore. I've never been to Bangalore in my life before that. This is 2010. And the reason I went was there was an event going on, which was called Unplugged. Okay. And us samay there were no events. Your story was barely there. I think it had not even started. There was none of these other events. There was just Unplug was going on. It was in a small, very nondescript hall. And I went over there. And, you know, there is a number of people I met over there who are like, oh yeah, these are interesting people, and now you know they're all in different zones. So you know, I remember meeting Pallav Nadhani over there, who was building Fusion Charts at the time, and you know now has exited and is an investor. I remember meeting Sanjay Swami and Bala, who are now Prime Ventures, and Bala runs MoneyTap. I remember meeting a very small startup at the time who was pitching in that event called Capillary Technologies, Krishna. I remember meeting the star, not the star, but well, lack of better words, you know the one of the bigger speakers of that event was somebody called Alok Kejriwal from Games, from the Games to Win. So I met him, and apparently he was a customer of mine of the US company I used to work for. Um, and you know, and then there were two, three other. There was a couple of people from InMobi very early. One of the founders, Amit, I think, was there. So this was the OG crew. मतलब this was the 2010 का ये है पूरा Bangalore startup ecosystem. ठीक है, ये रहे सब लोग. Besides, I think the Flipkart guys, pretty much this was it, right? And then there was few other startups who also, and few other great guys who we've kept in touch since. So I said, no, this is exciting. Yeah, ये तो मतलब they are very nice guys, very smart people. I would love to sort of be a part of that ecosystem. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was the that prompted me, and I still recollect whenever I meet any one of them that you know, from those days of being like in a small now nondescript hall where Ashish Sinha was organizing this little event, you know, which had like, you know, matlab, barely like 10, 15, 20 startups and all these exciting founders to, you know, honestly where we've gotten to today.
Yeah, yeah. No, looks like you went to the right group and also
Yeah.
that right event, and you know you got in touch with the right people. Now all of them are doing great in the ecosystem, and yeah, Aakrit, you know, Haptik has reached what, over 100 million users. You know, it got acquired by Reliance Jio, and you're also, you know, at the same time, you're a very active operator investor. So we'll just pick the thread from what you said. You know, you moved in 2011, and there were barely, you know, people building companies. It was just the beginning. To fast forward to today, you know, we were having a conversation the other day where you said, you know, the founders are raising capital within few days. And literally, you have few hours to decide if you want to invest or not. And the funny thing is, we haven't even started yet. Like if you look at, you know, the tech ecosystem cycle has a year of, let's say, 30 to 40 years. We are still in the first one, the 10-year, and it's just going to compound exponentially. So how do you think, like, what's your view? Where are we today if you compare to 2011 to, you know, 2021 today?
Oh, it's been crazy, man. If you would have told me, like, I mean, okay, let's play this out, right? So obviously, this decade can't even explain how things have changed, right? I mean, back in 2011, there was one seed fund, Bloom Ventures, and they also had just started. I remember coming to Bombay and meeting Karthik. and Sanjay. And they had also just literally started, like they had made the first investment. They hadn't even completely closed the fund. They were just sort of getting up and running. Um, there was like three or four of these big VCs. And I think forget about मतलब unicorn तो चलो अभी दूर की बात है. There was like valuations of hundreds of millions and stuff were still sort of being discussed and spoken about. It's been, I think, if you think about these 10 years, right? For me, if I had to just think about the digital ecosystem, which honestly also impacts to some degree the country's growth, right? And as you've seen it, there have really been three events that moved it sort of forward exponentially. And actually, this is one interesting part about India. I was just, while you were talking about it, यहाँ पे fortunately or unfortunately आपको ऐसा steady every year growth दिखने को मिलेगा नहीं, right? Like it won't be like, okay, look, now we're going to grow 10%, and I'm not saying economy, I'm just saying in general, we're going to grow 10% year on year, and about 8 years we'll get to a great economy. No, I think India is a very unique beast in that sense, where it requires jhatkas. Unless major events happen, we can't sort of move forward. And for the digital economy, fortunately, right, there were three big events. And yeah, fortunately, unfortunately, whichever, but there were three large events, right? And all of them, if you think about it, is a 5-year story. So I think the first 5 years of this last decade was still like, okay, we're figuring it out. Flipkart is becoming unicorn, Ola is becoming unicorn, but there's a lot still to be done. And the last 5 years has been a game changer. And the first event, which was in 2016, was the launch of Jio, right? That, of course, by cutting the data prices to that extent, it just meant that the consumer was more on the internet than ever before. So I think that just, would that give the first jhatka of that leapfrog, right? Where suddenly there was more people using the internet, and more importantly, more people using more of the internet, right? Which was just a big exponential like leap. Second, of course, for the entire payments industry, but really it had more effects was just demonetization, right? Even though unfortunately it didn't do much to the country and the goals, but people just developed that habit of interacting and transacting digitally. And then the third, which is very unfortunate, of course, and we never want to repeat this again. But look, from the digital perspective, it's been again a growth period. Is the entire last 2 years of COVID. I mean, it just forced people to migrate to digital and internet sooner than later. It forced people to transact a lot sooner. And these three things in the last 5 years, I think have, at least for the digital ecosystem, moved us by 10 years versus compared to the first five, right? The first five, we were just waiting for things to happen. And yeah, I think on the basis of just these three big paradigm shifts, you're going to see a wild next decade coming up.
Yeah, no, this is so well put together, and yeah, it's only going to accelerate and compound moving forward. So, there's a lot of people. Of course, I mean, it's pretty evident. People are taking the note. Just booming, and a lot of people now have started thinking about even moving back to India, because one thing that has changed in India now is you can really build a global company from India, and that's attracting a lot of ambitious people who've been living abroad and they want to come back to India. If you were to move back to India, let's say this year, what would you work on, or how would you navigate the move? How would you think about it?
Yeah, man, I think I would just be anxious full day because I would just have like a stress if I come back if I was to move as a tech person to India now. When I moved back, it was easy. 10 log to the, matlab, in log ko millo ho gaya, that was it, right? And you are part of the ecosystem. Done. Great, right? Now you now just, keep talking to them and let's see what you can do. Now is a wild west there. It's, see, look, here's the thing, right? I think the one fundamental difference is when people moving back in that era, 10 years back, were moving back betting on the market, right? We will go down and we'll figure something out, right? Because there's a lot to be done. And also the hope was the market will pan out. I think today, as anybody should think about moving, they should now, the market's already there, right? So that's done. Now you will have to move with a bit more of a concrete plan of, okay, look, which space do you want to dabble in, which area do you want to work in, and then perhaps double down and build your entire uh, presence, network, everything within that, right? Because if you just come and say, "Okay, look, I don't know what to do and I'll figure it out," I think now it's a bit more tricky to do that because there's already so many people working on so many things and figuring so many things out. So I think first is to, and it's easy to be done now, right? Because there's so many cross-border entrepreneurs between the US and India. I think the first thing is to narrow down a little bit what you want to do.
Mhm.
So, for example, I have a couple of friends. What they do is same what I did, right? Which is, they come to India for a week, 2 weeks, spend some time getting to know little bit who their immediate friends, and go back and say, okay, listen, I think I've narrowed down what I want, right?
Yeah.
And then kind of make the big move. The second also is, which was very different. This was non-existent during our time. Is there are lots of great companies today. Let's say all your unicorns, or even companies like Geo, us, others, right? Who can provide a very nice landing pad for you to come here, be a part of a leadership or team or a senior team for some time, and then sort of figure out what you want to do next, right? So let's say at Haptik, हम तो बोलते हैं कि हम तो importers हैं लोगों के from the US, right? We have 4 of my current leadership team directly moved from outside, and that's because of my friends who I knew from there. And then 3 ex people also that I had directly moved. So because the wavelength matches, like because we work there, both my co-founder and I worked there for so long, we understand the working environment, and we also understand making the move, right? So it also helps them that, okay, you know what, these guys have done it, so it'll help me also. And think about all the unicorns, think about all the large digital conglomerates and all the companies. So I think that landing pad opportunity is very much there today. And if I had to do it differently, I would probably do that, right? I would come here, park myself for a couple of years, really get to know and understand the Indian consumer and the ecosystem, and then see what I want to do. I think the third is, so that's on the optimist side, right? on the on if I had to be a on the negative or the pessimist side, especially if you're moving from California, right, or New York, for that matter, any of the big places, or Miami these days. I think we tend to underestimate how chaotic life over here is compared to, let's say, the US or the UK. I think India may, even though as much as you talk about the idea of this whole support system and everything, sure, that's great. But I think life can be much harder because of the chaotic nature of the systems, right? There's very little organization. um, I mean, simple things like infrastructure is so weak still, and obviously we're all working to solve it. um, you know you're based in Delhi, right? You know what happens in November when it comes to the air. So those things, I don't think people factor in so much. I think it's important to factor in. Don't come in with the expectation that your quality of day-to-day life is going to remain the same, right? Come in with the expectation that you're doing it because of a larger mission and an opportunity to build something large in a very fast-growing market. But just like a developing country, there are a few things on a quality perspective that are not quite up to the mark, and you have to accept it and sort of run with it and build towards improving it, right? So like my quality of life in 10 years has gone up a lot because just the country's progressed. But otherwise, at least if you set yourself right with that expectation, that will be good. If you don't, and you ask me what were the challenges in the journey, that was it for me, राइट? आई थॉट कि अरे नहीं, इंडिया में तो मतलब स्टाफ होता है, ये होता है, कार गाड़ी वाड़ी ये सब, ऑल दैट shouldn't be hard. But I found that there are a lot of things that are different, and don't make it easy sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think these are all very smart advice. First, definitely you should come back and spend time, figure out what, narrow down your interests and go back. And then secondly, I think it's a very smart approach. You can, join a late stage company in a leadership position and really spend time there and build out the network and then figure out what you want to do next. And third is definitely very important. You should know what you're getting into, and you should be coming back for the right reasons. And Akrit, you you studied in US and then you worked there for a little bit. In hindsight, were there any experiences or skill sets that you learned in the US which ended up becoming valuable in India for you?
Um, yeah, great question, man. One thing I think people in the US, and it all stems from the education system. ठीक है अगर आप देखोगे there is no rocket science to this. It is just about how people in a country are raised and how they are taught and how what are the principles around which their school and education system works, right? हमारा education system, let's say, क्या है, right? Good, bad, ugly. I'm not commenting that, but basically, you and I both know that it's built on studying last minute in the 1 week. ठीक है आप कुछ नहीं करोगे पूरा semester, right? You will chill. Your school may also you will do all the stuff. You won't have the part-time jobs. You will not work on that per hourly wage model and all of that. But you will work your ass off in the last 1 week and you will come first. ठीक है मतलब वो and you are likely very bright and intelligent because of just the no calculator usage in your school, the critical problem solving that boards like CBSE and ICSE give, the hard work that's taught to you by your parents because of the nature of country of India. So you always taught कि नहीं तुम 15 घंटे काम नहीं करोगे you will never achieve something, just those principles, right? Now that translates into work. Okay, so when you're working, correct, if you look at just generally culture and startup culture and also this is the same thing, na? Matlab, operation execution is always like हाँ ठीक है मैं कर रहा हूँ मैं कर रहा हूँ मैं कर रहा हूँ till Thursday nothing will happen, and then engineers will spend 2 nights and 48 hours non-stop, Friday Saturday binging and get it done. Similarly, when you think about priorities of people over here, the priority is of course work hard, solve great problems, but of course do it in a very different way. And a community camaraderie matters a lot, like my friends matter a lot. And also just the operational style can sometimes come off as a little casual, correct? In the US versus, right, I go back to now the difference in cultures and growing up. You have your high school or even your middle school or your school is like very much like college. You have semesters, classes. If you don't attend a class, you get penalized. You have exams every few weeks, midterm exams and so on. So you're pretty much preparing for it all sort of semester year round, right? Even as early as in school. So you're used to very much an operational plan that will sort of execute step by step. Second, and I know a lot of people talk about this, but I completely believe in this. Because most people or most kids in the US do some part-time job that pays them by the hour, there is absolutely a big difference where they value their time a lot more. It's just inherent, right? Like it's just back of your mind that if I spend 1 or 2 hours doing wasteful work, I'll probably lose $40 because आपको ऐसे ही वो tune किया गया है as you were growing up, right? So as a result, I used to keep saying this to my then girlfriend, now wife, and I used to move back and forth between the US and India earlier. I said, I don't know what is there, but यहाँ पे, when I was in the US, यहाँ पे I work 8 hours. I get the same amount of stuff done that I do when I work in India for 14. I don't know what's the case. Is it just that? Is it the air? Is it like people around me? Is it something else? But it blew it. And I still haven't figured it out. It kept blowing my mind because I'm not even talking about work, other people. I'm saying me, same person. It's the same human being, same way of working, but just 8 or 9 hours over there. I don't know. It was something, right? Um, so that was a big skill, to your point, a big difference that I noticed, and a skill or something that I think I picked up from there, and at least try and inculcate in Haptik, right? Like in startups, it's difficult to have work-life balance, and of course, if you're joining a startup, don't you should put work-life balance aside. But still, right, at Haptik, we we call it like smart work life balance, right? कि मतलब ये मत करो कि मतलब 3 दिन आपने कुछ नहीं किया and then 3 days you're busting 72 hours, right? I fundamentally believe that if you genuinely just organize your day, then more than 8 to 10 hours of work is not required as long as you do it in life.
No, so interesting, Aakrit. I mean, I in fact never thought, about this the way you're thinking about it. It's very, very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, let's get to know you at a deeper level. Akrit, any favorite or a turning point in your life?
Uh, any favorite or turning point? You know, my or the official answer to this always is when I got married, when I had kids. Those are things you have to say because eventually my wife will hear this. Let's see. Look, I think there's many serendipitous moments and many things like that. But I think for this past decade, if you were to ask me purely from a work perspective, um, I think there are four or five that I can very vividly recall. But I think the top would definitely be um, having the pleasure of or getting to connect and meet that one meeting that we ended up having with Reliance Jio.
Got it. And so, quick 4 or 5 questions. If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would that person be?
Warren Buffett.
Your favorite entrepreneur?
And Warren Buffett only because, yes, by the way, I want to give the logic behind that. Only because he's, of course, a very wise, sane, and all of that man. But I also think that I'm not saying this in a bad way, but at the age that he is, I may not have many chances to have dinner with him for many years, right? Baki sab to are fairly like young, unke साथ तो dinner करने का chance मिलेगा, that's why.
Got it. Your favorite entrepreneur could be from India, could be from anywhere in the world.
Favorite entrepreneur. Um, I've not been one of idol worship, to be honest with you. I don't have. Like I like a bunch of guys in the board, the way they do things. Um, I
Or few. Doesn't have to be one.
no, actually, to be honest with you, I don't think of life that way. That oh, this is the guy who I want to follow. But if you have to put a sword to my neck, because this has literally happened in my lifetime, like from the time I started college till today. Probably Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook launched the day I landed in the US, fall 2004 in undergrad. That's when Facebook launched, and it came to our college in 2005. So you kind of saw it along the whole way, WhatsApp, Instagram. So yeah, I think just purely maybe that's a company more than a person, I would say. But yeah, the person is behind it, so probably him.
Got it. And if you weren't working in tech or investing in tech, what would you be working on?
My family business of bed sheets and bath linen.
Got it. And we know you because of Haptik, because of an investor, someone who's involved in the tech ecosystem. What do your friends know you for?
Oh, uh, I can't answer that question because this podcast is PG rated, I think. So, all my closest friends in life have nothing to do with tech. They're as far away from tech and digital as it gets. And I like it that way. I like my life to be segmented in that sense. And, they know me for just being a crazy, fun person in college and beyond who likes to who likes to have who likes to live life large, have fun at a party, and make sure everybody else around them also has fun. They are so distant away from tech that I am their tech support. So like they will call me saying that listen, my Netflix account is not working. What should I do? Can you please help me? And my phone is not working, and I've unlocked it or locked it. And can you help me? So they treat me as tech support. That's how distant they are away from tech and digital. But yeah, I think from they just know me as a crazy fun person who likes to live life large.
I would love to hang out with you, Akrit, when I'm in Mumbai. And this was fun. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you for taking the time, coming on the podcast, talking about your journey. Getting born in India to moving to US, moving back, and then journey after moving back to India, and the advice. that you've given to people who are thinking about moving back to India, and I believe that's very very helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. It's been great. Doing this with you. Happy to continue to stay in touch, and yeah, exciting podcast. I hope people enjoy it.
Thank you.